just tell you the story of how the Team of Life came about. So picture this, we're close to the Sudanese border. It's a hot morning and our hosts have generously driven us closer to the border in order for us to meet with a group of young men. When we arrive, they're on the football field. There are yelps of delight coming from that direction, skillful moves, a dance almost being instantly orchestrated by up to 25 participants. There seem to be many aims of this game. Scoring goals appears to be only one of them. At regular intervals, someone takes a few moments to balance the ball in gravity-defying ways on one foot or on their head. Teammates create regular opportunities for celebration, for laughter and for camaraderie. And now we arrive, a white-faced audience. I wish for a moment that I could speak this particular football language and join them in their physical conversation, but this is not the code that I grew up with. And while I can admire this code, there's no way I could adequately physically participate within it. So my colleagues and I sit under a tree as spectators. All too soon, however, the young men are gathered together and ushered over towards us. They sit in a group, and because of our presence, a worker, like a psychosocial support worker, starts to speak with them about some of the hardships and difficulties that they've experienced in their lives. And the young men's faces start to close. The young men's faces, which had been so open to the world when they were on the field, now start to close. And their heads that were proud and held aloft when playing now start to drop. And the energy is completely transformed. It feels like a pall of the past has been draped over all of us. This was actually really the moment when the Team of Life sort of originated, because these young men were showing to us, were demonstrating to us that they had found some aspect of local folk culture, some aspect of life where they could regrade their lives, could come together, could escape from the isolation of some of the experiences that they had been through, and that there was something really significant happening there. I'm not saying that playing football was enough to suddenly deal with all the problems of their life, but perhaps it's an avenue. Perhaps it's an opening that we could engage with. So under that tree, just started to think, surely we can develop a way of working, a methodology that will take all that we know from the field that I'm a part of, which is the narrative therapy and community work field, take all that we know from that realm about what can assist people in responding to trauma, but engage with what the young people are showing us. So take, in this case, football, soccer as the starting point, and come up with something in partnership with them. So that's sort of where it started. And now it's being taken up in communities here in Australia with young refugee folk, but also a lot in Aboriginal communities and more widely in prisons and a whole range of different places. So I don't want to romanticise that everything about sports or sporting culture is a good thing. In my own life, I loved sports as a young person, and then the brutality and the hyper-masculine culture and the misogyny and the homophobia that became a part of all of that meant that I gave it up. Totally turned away from it because it was just horrible. And there's brutality within sporting culture and discrimination and everything else we find in the broader world as well. So within the Team of Life, we're not ignoring that. But we're trying to draw upon the aspects of meaning and local culture that young people are engaging with and seeing where we can go with that. Narrative practice is vitally interested in the stories of our lives and the different ways that these can be told, the different ways that these can be responded to, and depending on how that takes place, can either leave people feeling more able to go on with life or less able to go on with life. Just telling stories about your life is not necessarily a good experience. Depending on how you tell that story, what's focused on, how it's listened to, how it's responded to, who's present. These can either be tellings that are regrading or tellings that are degrading. And within narrative practice, a lot of thought over the last 20 years or so has gone into trying to think about how do we understand our lives through stories? How are our identities shaped by the stories that we and others tell about us? And how can we create contexts where people can tell the stories of their lives, become the authors of their own stories of their lives rather than other people dictating these stories upon them. And that's become a whole field now. Michael White used to teach that before you ever wanted to try and talk about, invite someone to talk about difficult things in their lives, you wanted to make sure that they had a safe territory of identity to stand in first. You don't just start asking people to talk about really difficult things in their life before there's this other territory to stand in. Now, we were on a different trip to Africa, actually in Zimbabwe. Michael was teaching about this and the workers were going, different territory of identity, what does that mean? And one of the workers said, is that like, if you're in a crisis, it's like you're in a river and you're trying to swim in the river, but it's really strong currents and there are like logs and might be crocodiles and other things, rubbish and all sorts of things. And it's not the time to look around and try and really take note of what's in the river with you, because if you stop and do this, you'll drown. But if you can get up on the riverbank and look then on your safe place and then look back at the river and everything that's going on, then you can talk about it and think about it and identify what's going on and work out where the bridge would be best to be placed or all those sorts of things. It's a nice metaphor, isn't it? So it's like creating this riverbank position, a position where people can understand themselves, experience themselves before we'd even need to touch on any of the tricky stuff. And the Team of Life aims to provide a bit of a riverbank, sort of mixing metaphors a bit, but you can imagine a team on the riverbank. The third principle is a very easy principle to engage with, but somehow easily forgotten, in that after the Team of Life was engaged with the first time in Australia, it's actually these folks here, young refugee folks in Dandenong, Victoria, in a school called St John's, and the facilitator there, his name's Milan Kolik. Anyway, after they engaged with it and had a great time and it went very well, I talked with them and I just asked them, if you were going to give advice to other people who were going to try this out, what were the key things they need to keep in mind? And the first thing they said was, just tell them to remember it's all about having fun. And if we can keep ensuring people are having fun, actually it's going to make it much more possible to talk about the sorts of things that we're going to try to later on. In narrative practice, this is called scaffolding, but it might not be the easiest way to understand it. Basically what it means is we're trying to always start in the place where people know things. Start with what people already know. Start with where people have a rich and familiar language. So this is where sports can be so helpful. Young people may not be used to talking about aspects of their life. They may be living in a context where they know that if they just go around talking about the difficulties in their life, people will think they're just full of problems, or people will harass them, or it'll make them more vulnerable. They might not have any vocabulary for explaining actually what's gone on for them. They might have had some terrible experiences that are very difficult to put into words. And so there's no familiar language to talk about these struggles. So we don't start there. We start with what they've got a really familiar and comfortable language in, which in this case is sports. And throughout the Team of Life, whenever things get a bit tricky, if we think people are really struggling to find words for their experiences, we quickly dart back over into the sporting language and sporting experience, and then we can dart back again. We keep sort of moving between one and the other. This is like a scaffolding from one realm of language and experience into another. But we always start with the familiar and where there's a rich vocabulary. When working with children or young people, the word disclosure is often talked about a lot, particularly if they've had hard times, and we mentioned this again yesterday, where within the Team of Life, we're actually not looking for individual disclosure, particularly if we're working with groups. It can be a bit hazardous if young people start talking about intimate details of hardships that they've been going through in a group setting. We don't know how other people are going to respond. It might trigger other memories for other young people, but we do want to give young people a chance to feel as if their experiences are acknowledged and to give them a chance to feel they're not alone in those hard experiences of life. So we're interested in a disclosure, but it's a collective disclosure, not an individual disclosure. We're interested in young people being able to talk about the difficult things that young people experience rather than having to name it absolutely as the difficulties that they personally experience. In the work that we've done with communities who are having strife, so often the histories of injustice in those communities are extreme. They've been going on for generations. And everybody knows that you're not going to be able to turn around the effects of those injustices instantly. Sometimes you're also working with individuals in any context, and they know that to get their own life together is actually a bit too hard at the moment. It's just a bit of a mess. In these contexts, what we've found is if we can just make it possible for this individual or this group or community to make a contribution to another individual or another community that's also going through hard times, and then this group who's going through hard times make a contribution over here, and then they find out that what they've said or what they've done, it really has made some difference, this can spark a whole new momentum. It can actually be the fact that they haven't got their own life or everything together, but something about what they've learnt through their struggles or their difficulties has assisted somebody else. This can be a turning point. It can be a sense that what they've been through isn't for nothing, that actually what they've been through, they've learnt some special knowledge, some special skills in dealing with these difficulties. And that's what we're vitally interested in, seeking out young people's special knowledge and special skills in dealing with hardship, and then finding a way that those special skills and knowledge can not only be used in their life, but actually can assist other people. And this is like a collective ethos, and it's a principle that we call enabling contribution. And some people think, oh, that's all very well and good, but if people are really struggling, you can't expect them to make a contribution to someone else. And actually, it's not how I would see it. It's not expecting them to make a contribution, but it's actually us facilitating a context where they can and do make a contribution, and that the more difficult the situation, the more important I would see that principle, and the more possible it can actually be. So it's in the hardest and the most complex situations that we would enact that principle the most. The first sort of structured part is to try to create a team sheet, so the Team of Life team sheet. So we're going to try and think of our lives as if it is a team. Now, it's best to take whatever team sport you most like or love to do this. We're going to do a collective one first, and then we're going to do a series of individual ones. Yeah, we need the whole pitch. And obviously, if we were doing an AFL one, this would not be the same shape. So what are some of the key things that a football team has? What are some of the components of a football team? Goalie. It's a good, important role, isn't it? In fact, it's quite a beautiful metaphor, goalkeeper. Because if we think about that as a metaphor, it's the person who's protecting your goals, isn't it? Goalkeeper. It's actually a very beautiful phrase that you might not think it's beautiful first because it's so taken for granted, but actually the keeper of your goals in life is a very evocative concept. So I guess that's the person who's sort of, looking out for you, who's protecting your goals, so a sort of reliable figure. Now, when we're doing this, it's really important that we're not just limited to people, to individuals. It might be a particular person you name. It might be a person who's alive, or it might be a person who's no longer alive. It's really important that people no longer have to be alive to be on your team. There are people who have passed away who are very influential figures and continuingly influential in our lives, much more influential than many living people. So whenever we're doing this, we want to make sure that young people know they can include people who've passed away. But it might also be an organisation that's protecting you, or a group that you're a part of. It could even be, you know, a social movement that you're a part of that really is the bedrock and what is supports you in your life. So it can be a wide range of figures. Any ideas, you know, if we're going to do a collective one here, who would be some of the people or things that you might consider as goalkeepers? What's protecting your goals? What's protecting what's precious to you in life?
Family.
Yeah, it is your family. So it might be whole family. Actually, can someone else come and write up these what people say? Because I've got shocking handwriting. Great, thank you very much. So there could be family members. Actually, we might make the goals down here, if that's okay. Make this, I mean, they're both goals, but we'll make this where the goalkeeper is, if that's okay.
Girlfriends.
Girlfriends, fantastic.
Parents.
Could be parents.
Pets.
Could be a particular pet, might be a goalkeeper.
Be a favourite writer.
Favourite writer. Nice idea. Who got an example?
I don't know, Socrates inspires a lot of people.
Socrates? Okay, it could be Socrates, could be in goal. That's not a bad goalkeeper to have. Sometimes a spiritual figure is a person's goalkeeper. Sometimes God has made an appearance in young people's goals. Grandmothers are actually some of the most sought after goalkeepers in my experience in young people's goals. And friends, sometimes it's fathers who've passed away, particularly for young refugee folks. It's they might no longer have their fathers with them, but they're goalkeepers. Sometimes it's an organisation that's been really, really helpful to them. Anyway, so that's the concept of goalkeeper. Anyway, then what else do teams have? Striker. So what's the role of the striker? To score the goals. So this is to achieve things and to score goals as the striker. So sometimes people put themselves as a striker in their team, but not necessarily. It might be who are the people or the figures or the organisation or the that's helping you to score goals. So would you have any idea who you would put as your striker on your team?
Brother.
Sorry?
My brother.
Your brother? Your brother would be the striker? Fantastic. So where does the striker go? If we were to run?
Near the other group.
Near the other goal? Just up here somewhere?
Yep.
Yeah. So can you put brother there? Fantastic. Anyone else got any particular suggestions of who your strikers would be?
I think like you said, self is a good one.
Sometimes this might be yourself. So we'll talk a bit about goals later. So what's your name?
Emma.
Emma. Can we put Emma there as striker as well? We've got Emma and your brother strikers at the moment. That's pretty. Actually, if you could put Emma, that would be great.
Teacher or lecturer.
It could be, absolutely. Okay, what else? What else do teams have?
Midfielder.
Midfielder. What's the role of the midfielder?
To help to strike and defend. Like if midfielder goes up and comes down, like it's like someone who fills the gap in the defense.
Someone who fills the gaps.
Yeah.
Bit of a liaison person too, aren't they, sometimes, between the defence and the attack. And so it's a nice metaphor you said about filling the gap. Now when you're working with young people, you can have these conversations about what do these roles all play, like what's the significance of them. So then they can think about that, and then you can say, oh, so, you know, is there someone who plays that sort of role in your life, or who would that be, or where would that fit? Well, how about for you again? Any ideas who with
Teachers.
teachers
Yeah.
might be in the midfield?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Where do the midfield go? They go a bit down here, do they?
Yeah.
Sort of in the middle? Sorry about that. I've got to go down here, Gail. Thanks a lot.
Sorry, Lee. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the middle. Fantastic.
So the midfielders will be pretty important people because they tend to control the game
Yeah.
in so much. Most of the game's played in the centre of the pitch and from defence go through the midfield and setting up the attacking.
Yeah, so important roles. Who would you have in your midfield, in your team of life?
I'll be there myself.
You'd be there yourself. Ah, it's pretty. Stan says it's pretty important. Would you? And you'd have Trevor, someone you really rely on. Okay. So can we put Stan and Trevor in the midfield there as well in our collective team? So yes, quite often people put themselves in the midfield as well. So, but not necessarily, because that's one of the things we're really interested in. This is a collective sense of identity, and we're just part of the team. Someone might draw their team of life, and they might be, they're on the left wing. They get involved sometimes, and when they're really needed, or this is a good role, and other people are mostly playing the roles in the team at the moment. And it's no problem. Life is collective. This is not just reifying some individual notion of life. Okay, what else do teams have, both on the field and round the field, or anything else? Referee. So there's the referee. Sometimes people want to name a referee in this part of the process, and sometimes not. Is there a particular referee you'd like to include? This is like the riverbank, so we want to include sort of your mum and dad?
Mum and dad.
Yeah, okay, great. So there's a referee as mum and dad. If people's sort of experiences of referees are like really negative, like it's like represents to them a tyrannical authoritarian figure, then they don't need to name a referee if they don't want to. But if someone says, there's an important referee in their team.
In order to play the game, you need one.
Yeah, so great. Mum and dad sounds like good referees to have. Coach is an important role too, isn't it?
Yep.
So this is where we've learnt the most from in life. So it could be, again, a person, or it could be a place or a group or something, but where we've learnt the most, where we would turn to for advice perhaps, and again, a living or no longer living. Any ideas for your particular teams? Sorry? A counsellor might be a coach? Sure, but a particular team, you might have a counsellor as a coach. A partner might be a coach. Great. Sorry?
Your teacher.
Teacher might be a coach.
Might be a granddad or an uncle.
Absolutely, might be a granddad or an uncle. Might be someone who's not alive anymore, but was where the key teachings came from. A mentor. Absolutely. So this could be a coach.
It could be an actual sports identity too. Maybe someone you don't know.
It could. It's good to have It's really good to have a few opportunities for, heroes or sports stars who can float into your team, particularly if young people are really struggling to name many people. You don't want to limit it to people who are actually in their lives all the time, so it's fantastic to have that avenue open. You might try, depending on who you're working with, you might try and allocate one or two spots for, heroes. You don't want the whole team filled up with heroes, but you want a few folks from their own more immediate life. But it's great to have some heroes. Sorry, you're going to say?
Icons like the Dalai Lama.
Dalai Lama, yes. Well, Dalai Lama could absolutely... Where would you put the Dalai Lama here in your team? As a coach, okay. That's not the first person who I've heard doing the team of life. It's usually, is it Lionel Messi? How do you say his name? No. He appears more often than the Dalai Lama, but I'm not sure what that says. But he's a very brilliant player. So, were you thinking of anyone in particular, Steph? Sorry, I've said called you Steph, called you your daughter's name. It's collective identity.
Yeah.
Natalie? Does it?
I was thinking of soccer stars.
Yes, particularly. Have you got a particular soccer star?
Pele.
Pele. There's a good soccer star. Where would you put Pele on your team, Nat?
Well, he's my coach.
Coach? Okay.
I'd have him for a substitute.
Yeah. Okay, substitutes are really important. Substitutes, are they, is this the bench over here? Is it over here? One of these home and away. So now substitutes are a fantastic metaphor in sports because these can either be, like special figures who you bring on in a crisis moment, but they can also be people who they're definitely in your team, but actually sometimes it's better off if they're not on the field, like if they're not actually too involved, like, or they're people who sometimes you get on really, really well with them and they're on in your life and it's fantastic, and other times it's quite good if they go to the bench for a little bit. Like, so in young people's lives this is quite a good metaphor often. So anyone got any suggestions as who might be on their reserves bench? The parents might make a bit of an appearance on the bench.
Maybe Albert Ellis. Do you know Albert Ellis?
Albert Ellis.
Therapy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Put Albert Ellis on the bench.
Very pugnacious. He's
Yeah.
supportive at times. A bit of a pain in the neck.
Okay. This is a diverse team. We've got the Dalai Lama, Albert Ellis, parents, Pele. This is quite a team.
Just workers.
Siblings might make a bit of an appearance on the bench. Yeah, that's probably quite...
I put my children on there.
You
Put them on and off when I wanted to.
Yeah, put them on and off, along with Pele. You've got a rich bench there. You've got your kids and Pele. That's fantastic. Pele would probably... You said you'd like the challenge. Pele would probably be quite a good mentor too. While they're on the bench, they could probably have some good conversations.
Young people, I think teachers can be both positive and not positive.
Yeah, so they might... Looks like the bench is going to be quite popular in this group. So we're going to have a really, very large extended bench. That's a good thing. Social worker might go on the bench. I have, quite often social workers have had some good roles on here. In fact, there's, because we need spectators too, don't we? Like people who are cheering you on. I went to a football game. The great thing about the Team of Life, and this, I really strongly suggest this, like anything you really, really love, find a way that can be part of your work. So, like developing the Team of Life has been fantastic. So I can go to a football game now, and it's like I can feel totally justified that I'm doing sort of research. You know, this is fantastic. So I was in Argentina, and I said to the folks I was there with, "Do you think we could go to a football game? I think this would be really important for my knowledge of football." Anyway, it was. So at this game, at this stadium, which is the team that Maradona used to play for, I didn't actually grow up playing. I grew up playing another, but it was Boca Junior. Yes, okay. So there I am at Boca Junior, and when the singing starts and the chanting and the streamers are going everywhere, it's like unbelievable. And every time the Boca Junior had the ball, the whole crowd's on their feet and they're going like this, like just go, no, go. It's this physical demonstration of support for their team, and it was really quite beautiful. I mean, apparently the songs they were singing were absolutely vile and disgusting about the other team, and I don't speak Spanish, so that's probably quite good. But this sort of movement I now always think of in terms of who are the people in our lives who may not be alive anymore, but who are those people who would be, you know, go, we want you to go. So, and sometimes social workers have been named as those people in young people's lives. Other times they've probably been put on the bench. But who might be those sorts of folks who are doing this in our lives? Friends?
Are we on spectators now?
Spectators now, yes, sorry, thanks. Sorry, extended family might come in the role of spectators.
Work colleagues.
Yeah.
Work colleagues, yeah.
Grandchildren.
Grandchildren, yeah.
Previous players.
Previous players on the team, yeah.
Ancestors.
Yeah, ancestors, absolutely. I think sometimes it's, you know, these are quite profound teams sometimes,
But
and
at any given
ancestors.
time, you can only have 11, 12, 13 people playing.
Yeah.
But then years down the track, you might have hundreds and hundreds that have played for that particular team, our team, that are still part of the whole, like you said, process
Yeah.
in a sort of different way.
I think it's a really beautiful way of putting it. So this is like ancestors and all others who've played on this team. Perhaps some people's conception of team might have been that this team existed well before we came along, and that we're, yeah, and traditions, and we're continuing them. So it's great to be, now we're getting into this other realm of the meaning of team. And we might be starting to think of what are some of the, you said tradition, so what are some of the traditions or values or things that this team is defending? You know, that what do we stand for? What are some of the values or traditions that our team believes in, stands for? These we would place behind the goals here. This is like what our team believes in, what our team values. It's a bit harder to do that with this collective one because we're. But you suggested it, so.
So I'm interested for you to answer that for us. What that team there would have used
I'll tell you a little bit later about some of the different things that young people put, but they put some beautiful things. Faith and trust. Sometimes the values that some young refugee folks have named. That's what their teams stand for. Young people they don't give you a whole lot of words often, but actually when they do give you a few words, we want to just make the most of those words, and I'll tell a few stories of that later on. They're economical with words, but when they say a few words, then we want to honour their particular descriptions and particular phrases. We can also just try that whenever we get this value or this tradition that they've said is important for their team, we can try to hear about its history, where it's come from, who it's linked to. Anyway, you'd just be trying to trace a little bit of the histories of these things and linking them to other people on the team. So they might say, look, that really comes from the coach over here, or might really comes from Pele on the bench. Or anyway, you're just trying to trace a little bit of history of where these things come from. Okay, what else do teams have?
The ground, and it can be a home or an away.
Yeah, the ground is a really, really good metaphor to explore. What are your home grounds? There might be one, or there might be more than one, and it's where you feel as if you've got a home ground advantage. Now, we want to be clear that this is not somewhere that people necessarily go all the time. They might not live on their home ground. I remember one young guy, it wasn't the school, it wasn't his home, it was the shopping mall. That was where his home ground advantage was, because that was the space that he and other young people had claimed. Don't think he felt particularly safe at home, don't think he felt particularly safe at school. It might be somewhere that you go only in your dreams now, or in your memories, or you might have more than one. But yes, to try and give people a chance to talk about where their home ground might be. Any ideas where your home grounds might be?
Country of birth.
Country of birth, yeah. What would you say for your home ground?
Iran.
Iran?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Iran and Australia? Yeah, so 2 home grounds. Fantastic. Any other ideas for home grounds?
By a river along a bicycle path.
Oh, fantastic.
It can be in different places.
Yeah, so it could be, and various people might say anywhere near the water. That's where I have home ground advantage. Or that's where I find a sense of home. So there can be places, they can be shopping malls, they can be countries, they can be diverse experiences of home ground advantage.
Could that be a person also?
Yeah, it could be if you have a real sense of home with a person, wherever they are, you are, or yeah. Do you have an example of that?
Oh, I'd say probably my auntie. She knows me more than I know myself, and if I ever do I forget myself sometimes, she'd always bring me back home.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful description. So if we were working with in a group and someone said something like that, anytime people says anything that's a bit like, slightly different, you think, oh, there must be a story there, so you just try and hit a little story, and they're beautiful words. Weren't they beautiful words? You'd be rescuing those words and making sure they appeared somewhere on the team sheet. It's little moments of poetry. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, what else? Anything else that teams have that should include?
Guernseys, maybe?
Guernseys, yes. So, okay. What about a uniform, or a Guernsey, or like a logo? Is it logo? Mascot. Or a colour? Yeah, any particular colours? So, okay, we've got a few things here. Anyone got a particular mascot, symbol or colour that would represent you? Your bear. You would be and sometimes this goes along with the name of the team too. So so a bear. So sometimes any other ideas for mascots or colours? Winnie the Pooh. Fantastic. We've got 2 bears. So the bears are predominating here at the moment. A flag. Would you have a particular flag on your team? And a combination of the Italian and Australian flag. Fantastic. And so you can draw find a way for the young people to draw these on their team or on the back, or. Sorry. Okay.
I'd say my grandchildren.
Your grandchildren would be like the symbol of this team. you see how diverse these teams can evolve?
Oh, I was going to change it, but my father for the footy team, but also the team song. I was going to.
Yes, well, the team song is vitally important. Well, it's not always vitally important. I'm a bit biased towards songs, but it's just sometimes it can really help take the team into a whole different sort of realm of meaning when you try and think what would be the theme song for my team of life, like. And this can be, usually it's an existing song. Later on I'll show you some songs that people have actually written as their theme songs of their team. But any ideas of particular songs that might be on your team theme song?
We are the champions.
We are the champions. Could be a popular one. Okay, so that's a pretty good collective team we've got there, isn't it? Very richly told team. What, unless anyone else has got any other additions, do you want, yes, any particular names of your teams? That'd be the only other thing, that sometimes you'd try and come up with a bit of a name for your team. It's a bit harder for us to come up with a collective name, but Killers. That's really lovely. The Killer Bears. Not an ordinary bear by the sounds of things. Okay, that's really delightful, yeah. Okay, well, maybe we'll stop there for the team names. And what's best to do now is if you can try and create your own team of life. Within sporting culture, one of the things that sporting culture is fantastic about is celebration. Like, it's actually whole cultures of celebration within sports. So when a goal is scored or some achievement is made or a game is won, people really know how to celebrate. What are some of the ways that people celebrate on the sporting field? We need to make a bit of a list. Is someone happy to make a bit of a list of these? Yes, okay, great. So what are some of the ways when a goal is scored or whatever sport we're talking about, when something significant is achieved, what are some of the ways of celebrating? High five. So we're going to down high five. Sorry, what were you going to say there? Fist pumping, high five. Big hug.
Big jump in them. Jump in the arms.
Big jump in the air. Take your clothes off, all of your clothes, or... Depends what sport you're playing, I guess. Yeah, that sounds interesting, sport. But anyway, so taking off some clothes, yeah, absolutely. Ronaldo lifting the shirt over the head, fantastic. Dance routines, some of the African and Brazilian football teams in particular. Wonderful. Backflips. Sorry, have you got all these? We're going pretty fast here. Yes, okay, great. Open up champagne, yes, that's a good one. Sort of champagne shower. Yep. Group hugs. Group hug, yeah, we had group hug over here as well, yes. Falling down.
Either forwards in thanks or backwards.
Oh, backwards. You wouldn't be happy to demonstrate either of those, would you? Like Federer, oh yeah, that's become quite a big thing, isn't it? They just fall onto the ground. So, yes, either falling forwards or falling backwards. Fantastic.
Sort of, personalised gestures like the Leighton Hewitts and it was that bike rider who shoots, the Tour de France bloke who does a little shooting gesture.
Okay, so that's two different ones. Can you jot those down? So the sort of strange ostrich manoeuvre, duckbill come on number, and what's this one?
He cocks a pistol and shoots.
Is he? Okay.
I think probably at his opponent.
It's just a nice peaceful gesture like that. Yeah, okay, okay. Sorry?
Elevating the...
Oh, elevating, yes, and carrying people off on their shoulders. That's a good one. That's a good one.
family. I've seen players cradle a baby if they've scored a goal.
Yes, that seems to be
One cradling the baby, someone communicating to the family.
communicating to the family or to others in the stands, and yeah, okay, fantastic.
Sometimes you get political messages of support sometimes, but sometimes they get in trouble for that.
Yes, yes.
In Liverpool, there was a lot of people lost their jobs on the docks, and
Right.
the industry was dying down, and a couple of players scored a goal. You know, something about the soccer.
Oh, did they? Okay, so it's a show of solidarity at the moment that a goal is scored, dedicating this goal to a cause or to a community, dedicating your goal. That's fantastic. That's a really important one, I think. Sorry, the Black Power salute. Yeah, that was a significant celebration. Giving of trophies. So yes, there are also formal celebratory and award events. And can you get a sense of quite how rich the culture is of celebration within sports? Very, very rich celebrations. So when we're meeting with young people, do you think young people would know about some of these celebratory cultural things? Yeah, so we can also ask them to act some of these out a bit, give us a few demonstrations. You just want to have a bit of a conversations about celebrations and start getting into this this idea that when a goal is achieved, that you celebrate it in all sorts of different ways. And then what we do is we start thinking about goals that these teams have already scored. Often when you talk about goals and young people, people usually start thinking of future-orientated goals, goals that have not yet been scored. Well, we do that, but we don't do it first. That's a little bit later on. First of all, it's really important that we look at a goal that this team, that each team that we've done here has already scored, already achieved. Now, so that's the one thing that's important. It's a past goal. The second thing is it does not have to be huge. And the third thing is the person whose team it is does not have to have actually kicked the goal themselves. It's a team achievement. So that's the wonderful thing about team sports. If a goal is achieved, you're all celebrating it, even if your part was, not the most high profile part. So we're trying to think of a goal that each of these teams have scored. And then comes the important part, because we then need to make a goal map. A map describing how this goal was scored. This is the first goal map, one of the first goal maps that was created in the Team of Life. It was created in Brazil. We're actually in a drug rehab, believe it or not. There was this young guy, an 8-year-old guy, who was like the son of one of the workers, I think. He wasn't in the drug rehab, but he was doing the Team of Life with us. And he said that the goal that his family had scored, his team was included his family, and the goal was to make me a nice person again. He had obviously got a bit off track at some point and he was no longer being quite such a nice person, and somehow the family had come together and Pa had kicked the ball to Ma, who'd kicked the ball to him, and he'd kicked the goal. That was how it had worked. And now he was a nice boy again. He was a gorgeous little kid. And somehow this was the collective achievement. So any goal that a team has scored is going to involve different moves, isn't it? There might have been, depending what sport, there might have been a hand pass from the back pocket. Your back pocket's probably played a bit of a role there. And it might have been a kick forward. The ball might have got spilt loose and it might have looked terrible at one point, and then you regathered, or the crowd, the spectators might have played a role in cheering you on. And anyway, all the different members of the team may have contributed in some way to this goal that has been scored. Sometimes these goals are small, but they're usually significant goals. It might have been to stay in school. It might have been to get to Australia. And to get to a goal like to get to Australia, the young person may not have played the biggest role, and they're mapping out how this was achieved by a whole range of different people.
At the moment, I'm from my father's home. Then they took me to school. After primary level, I went to secondary. After secondary, I went to college. After college, I qualified as a teacher. After being qualified as a teacher, I was employed, and then after that, I went to Mount Elgon Self-Help Project. After going in the project showed me the ways I should live safely and living well in a very healthy life or high life. And that is when, after showing me the way to the good life, I got a very nice house.
I believe you had a song for your team. Would you be happy to sing that? Because we've talked about past goals now, then we want to give people a chance to talk about future goals. We never look to the future until we've created like this heritage of achievement. Like it's a history of achievement that we sort of unearthed first. Does that make sense? Like if you just ask a young person, what goals are you going for? What are you going to try and achieve? It can actually be a bit overwhelming. It's like it can be too much. They might not be able to think of what they would do. But if you first made it really clear that goals are not these solitary achievements, that they're actually achieved collectively, and then we've celebrated something that's happened in the past, then it's much, much easier to look forward. In fact, the young people on this camp, they said, okay, well now we should talk about our future goals. So they were actually even initiating it. And the way we did it here was, again, keep coming back to, sporting metaphor. Remember at the beginning I said that, what did you say, like time out it was, or the tennis thing, that you're moving back and forth between other aspects of life and sports. So we'd go back and think about and use even the imagery of the football and to try and think what the next goal might be. This doesn't have to be a huge goal. If people are struggling to think of what their goal might be, there are a couple of things you can ask. You can say, well, do you have any hopes or wishes for your family or for your younger brothers or sisters? They don't just have to be personal goals. Does that make sense? Sometimes people can think of goals much more easily when it's a bit of a collective goal. And also if people are only thinking of trying to imagine a great big goal, you can even say, like, what are your hopes and wishes for next month or, next weekend even. That's if people are getting stuck. You want someone just to be able to identify some small or big hope. So here are some of these ones. My next goal is to bring my half family to Australia. Then we can use that metaphor of training. What training are you doing to achieve this goal? And who are you going to involve? So it's clear that it's not a solitary pursuit. I rather love this one. This person was taking it so seriously, was kept crossing out the words and trying to work out how to write these down. So my next goal is I want to get a friend in Adelaide. How am I training to achieve this? I'm training with my friends soccer at afternoon. And who am I going to involve? My coach. My coach, half soccer, me to play. Anyway, I guess that means helps me to play soccer, and this is going to be a way to make friends. And this one's a big goal. My next goal is to be a pilot. How am I training to achieve this? To stay in school and to read hard. Who am I going to involve? My teacher and my parents. So fantastic, fantastic goals. But you get the idea of how we approach goals. We don't just look to the future before we've created a rich heritage of achievement in the past. Not grand achievement, but something that the team has managed to do. So remember at the beginning we said that we wanted to have a way of creating a riverbank, and that was really this first part of the exercise is creating a riverbank. And then we also wanted to make it possible for young people to maybe talk about some of the more difficult things in life, but in a way that would make them stronger. So we wanted to find also how to use this metaphor, how to use the team of life to enable young people to talk about some of the more difficult things, but in a way that doesn't put them on the spot and isn't about individual disclosure. It's more about broader difficulties that young people face. So I'm going to give two different examples of two different ways that people have been doing that. One is trying to again focus on some achievement that young people have done, but this time in relation to problems. So, and again using a bit of a sporting metaphor. So depending what sport you're accustomed to, sometimes the metaphor of tackling is quite a good metaphor in relation to tackling problems. So with these young guys in Dandenong, what we'd do is, well, what Millen would do is to start off by saying, okay, what's your sort of favourite ways of tackling? What are the best tackles that you've ever seen or been a part of? And they'd enact these. In fact, maybe we should just do one of those. It's a little bit dangerous, but if I volunteer myself to be tackled, that might be a good idea. So, so the favourite tackle usually seemed to be the slide tackle for some reason within soccer. Do you think you could help me out for a minute? Would you mind tackling, getting the ball off me, which will not be difficult at all? So this is not my Brazilian. I'm not going to get into quality side there. Oh my God! What's the name of your team again? It wasn't the. It was the, sorry. Plimpton, okay, it's a lot better than the Killers. So I was just checking. I wouldn't want to be doing this against you. So you can just, enact a bit of a tackle. So I don't know if you want to do a slide tackle. That might not be so good on the hard floor. But whatever sort of tackle you would like to do to dispossess me of this ball. And anyway, they just... thank you very much. So they just enact some of these. And again, it would be joyful and playful. But they really did love slide tackles. So... They had very nice purple carpet there for some reason in this particular school, and so they'd get down and they'd enact these, and because they want them photographed. So it was like the star turn of doing the tackle in order to get their photograph taken. And these photographs were then placed on the certificates because they would talk about what was one problem that they'd been able to tackle over the last while, either them or their team. This is James's certificate. You'll hear a bit more about James this afternoon. This is a document to acknowledge James's achievements in tackling problems and in particular meeting new people over the last year. James would like to appreciate his brothers, Peter and Samuel, who've taught him not to push too much. There's just these little phrases that are their own words that you would then include in the certificates. Not to push too much because life is not all about winning. And his father, who taught him not to get angry if you lose, or too happy if you win, because it's more about having fun. So these were the people he wanted to appreciate and their statements. And then he had a number of tips to other people if they were going to try and overcome this particular problem. So we're always trying to frame this so that the young people are making contributions to others. Remember that theme? We can then evoke some of the other sort of sporting celebratory rituals. It just happened to be at the time of the Olympics when this team of life was graduating. They were finishing their course. So what happens in the Olympics when people have achieved something significant. You have medals, anthems, and like that podium thing where you stand, and flags, and anyway, so there was a whole ceremony held at that school. There's another photo here. The Pope was very kind to come and give his blessing, actually, on this particular ceremony. They thought was very appropriate, and very proud recipients, and it's celebrating some of their achievements in tackling problems. So that's one method.
I would like to introduce our group name, which is World United. We are the World United here at Martinsfield. We have a song we would like to share with you. The words come from our hearts, and we hope you enjoy it. And here it is.